Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I've got a tag to share with you using the Altenew Garden Rose layering die set. This is a video that I shared over on the Altenew YouTube channel back in July, so I apologise if you've already seen it. If you haven't, I do hope you enjoy watching. So I'm starting off by sharing the Craft a Flower Garden Rose layering die set with you. I wanted to show you that some of the recent sets, well all of the recent sets I should say, have like an image in the inside portion of the dies. So in this instance some of them are arrows and some of them are like keyhole shapes. So what you can do is you can just line up that shape so that all of the layers kind of fit on top of each other and you see that shape in the inside. There is still images on the back of the packaging to show how you layer each one up, but it's quite helpful with that shape now in the inside of that die. So what I'm doing is I've cut out the petals from white cardstock and I'm going to add ink blending over the top. I thought that I would go for blue flowers today. Ordinarily I quite often stick with traditional colours for flowers, but for some reason blues, I absolutely love blues and I gravitate towards blue roses for some reason. I wish they existed in real life. I think there are some places where they're kind of mechanically kind of making them blue, but yeah, they're just so pretty. So I'm using some Altenew inks to ink blend over the top of these petals here. So I'm using the Glacier Caves Crisp Dye ink collection and I've got the cubes here. I really love the cubes for ink blending in particular, and it's just quite helpful for storage purposes to have them in cubes. I started off by using the mini blending tool from Altenew, which I really love for smaller areas of ink blending, and I'm now bringing in some more colour using the mini blending brushes. Because these brushes have got like denser tips to them, the colour will automatically be darker purely just because you're kind of adding a more saturation of colour onto it. Even if the colour is the same, because the brushes are denser, it will automatically do that. So I wanted the inside of the petals to be quite dark, but I wanted the outsides to be really quite light, almost white. And I'm going to do the same thing for the leaves, but this time I'm using the Green Valley inks and I'm just going in with that mini ink blending tool because these areas are so tiny. I thought I would just stick with this brush, and I'm just using the two lightest shades. These are quite vibrant green, so I thought I could probably get away with just using two shades. And then for the centre I'm using the Full Harvest inks from Altenew, and I'm using Butternut and Pumpkin Pie for that. Just adding a very small amount, just adding a little bit darker sort of to one edge just to give it a little bit of dimension. So here you can see where if you layer them one on top of each other, you're gonna still have that shape in the inside, so you can see where they layer up really nicely together. So I'm adding some 2-in-1 precision glue pen onto the back of the petals. The only thing with these is sometimes it's difficult to see where you actually want to put the glue because it depends where they're going to layer up with the layer underneath, but I just try and sort of add some mainly sort of around where the hole is, and then at least I know that some of it is going to stick. So I'm just lining up that keyhole kind of shape there in the middle, and that's just going to bring this flower together. And then on the back of the packaging it does show where this last piece goes. I actually think that from memory there is an extra piece that goes on it as well, but I didn't cut that out because I couldn't honestly figure out quite how it worked. But this piece I still think looks nice on its own, but I think there is an extra piece that kind of goes underneath it. I didn't think it was necessary though, so I'm just popping that piece there, and it kind of looks like the petals folded up on itself. And then I've got the center of the flower, and that's going to cover over that hole in the middle. So just adding some glue kind of around the edges. Although this is a rose, like a garden rose, I think it could really be any flower. I just think it's a very pretty shape. So now I have cut 2 tags. This is the Altenew Terrific Tags die set. And I'm going to use one for the front of my tag, and then I'm also going to pop one on the back as well. So I'm just figuring out here where I want my flower to be, and I want to add some ink blending around it just so that it's not kind of stuck onto a plain white tag. And I wanted to use yellows because I thought I'd bring in a little bit more yellow from the center of that flower, but this time I'm using the Golden Sunset inks. This is kind of like a brighter yellow. And I'm just using the Sunray and the Snapdragon. In hindsight, I wish that I'd gone a little bit darker with the ink blending. I think it would have made the flower pop a little bit more. But, you know, sometimes you don't realise as you're doing it. So I'm adding some glue tape onto the back of the tag, and then I'm popping it down onto the other tag. So they're kind of back to back, so that the back of the tag looks nice if I want to add like a message on the back. I do go back in and add a little bit more ink blending, but I don't think quite enough to get that vibrancy that I think I would have preferred. For the sentiment, I'm using the Altenew Bold Sentiment stamp set. This has become one of my favourite sets. I love that it stamps kind of like the outside rather than the word itself, so that I don't actually have to do any heat embossing. I really love sentiments on black strips, but sometimes it is a little bit annoying to do the embossing all the time, so this is quite helpful to have it as a strip, and then you've kind of got the white for the word already. So I've inked up that stamp with Obsidian pigment ink, and I am going to stamp it twice so that that black ink gets really dark, and like I said, it's kind of going to look like you've got white writing on black cardstock. And then I am going to cut that out. So I've now placed my flower onto my tag, and I'm just using it as a guide so that I can figure out where I want to adhere my leaves down, and then I can add some glue onto the back of the leaves and then pop that down. Just using the tweezers, trying to pop them behind the flower. And I'm having the elements hang off this tag. It's not going to go like it has to go in an envelope or anything like that, which is quite helpful. So really it can be any size I want it to be. When I'm making tags, I do quite often add them to card bases, usually probably just kind of like a simple card base, maybe like white with some scored lines or something like that. But I do think they're quite nice just as standalone tags, kind of like if you would just wanted to send a little something to a friend. So I'm adding some foam tape onto the back of the flower, and then I can pop that down in the center of the tag. And I was just making sure that none of the foam tape is going to overhang where the flower overhangs the tag, so you can't see it on the back. So just popping that down, and then I'm adding some more foam tape onto the back of the sentiment. And then I can just pop that on top. I'm then adding some black baker's twine through the top of the tag. Just securing that in place, and then I can tie that in a bow. And I think the black works quite nicely with the colours, and then also the sentiment being black as well. And I like to have the tails of the bow quite long, and I also like to have quite big bows as well. And then to finish off, I'm adding some white enamel dots, just kind of popping a few of those underneath the petals. And I like to add embellishments in odd numbers, so I'm just figuring out here where I want to add the fifth. And that is the tag finished for today. Like I said, I think in hindsight I would have gone a little bit more vibrant with the colours, but I still think it's pretty. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on my blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.